Good morning. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the 5th Agro Lunch and Learn webinar of 2022. This webinar series is only possible through the generous support of Eurofins AgroScience Services. Thank you, Eurofins, very much for their continuing sponsorship. My name is Thuy with Thuy Consulting, specializing in compliance consulting for cannabis, hemp, food, dietary supplements, and cosmetics. I will be serving as moderator for today's webinar. Attendees should use the Q&A tool to submit their questions and comments, which will be answered at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. Before I introduce our speaker, I'll highlight the benefits of becoming an Agro member. Agro pays enormous benefits by enhancing your science, building your scientific network, and supporting your professional development. Please go to agrodiv.org and click on Become a Member to become an affiliate for $20 a year, regardless of your membership status with the American Chemical Society. Next slide, please. I'd also like to inform you about the upcoming ACS Spring National Meeting in Indianapolis in March 2023, a rare opportunity to experience agro content at the spring meeting. On Wednesday, the 29th, during the spring meeting, Corteva is offering to whisk you away to their campus just minutes away for an Agro Division social event. If you have any questions about the programming, contact Aaron Gross of Virginia Tech or our program chair for both the spring meeting in Indianapolis and the fall meeting in San Francisco. Next slide, please. Now I am proud to introduce our speaker, Brian Koontz. Brian graduated from Colorado State University with a BS in Natural Resource Management, then worked for the USDA Forest Service on the Colorado Western Slope and in Alaska. After returning to the Front Range, he entered the urban forestry and arboriculture industry and eventually started a business in the Denver area. 13 years ago, he began with the Colorado Department of Agriculture, namely helping farmers and ranchers understand EPA and USDA regulations. Following the passage of Colorado Amendment 64 in 2012, he soon began doing compliance assistance with the cannabis industry and was among the first in the nation to regulate cannabis on a state and federal level. Brian has been involved in developing sampling and investigative guidelines for a new and evolving industry and is excited to be serving in a leadership role for the Division of Plant Industries Hemp program. Let's welcome Brian Koontz.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Thuy. I appreciate that. And thank you for the invite. Let me go to sharing here. There we go. Can everybody see my screen okay now?
Yes.
Take that as a yes. Okay, cool. All right. So as Thuy had mentioned, I manage the hemp program for the Department of Ag here at the state of Colorado. I actually came aboard in this particular position in 2019 when things were exploding. We had exponential growth after the 2018 Farm Bill of people engaging in the hemp industry or the cultivation of hemp. And additionally, the registrations went from, 1,000 to like 3,000 just in a couple of years. So it was crazy, fast growth. Things have changed a little bit since. Basically, what we do with the program is we register land areas for farmers to grow hemp legally. After they complete the registration requirements, which include doing a federal background check for felony drug related convictions. Providing specific information about what they're growing and where they're growing. They do have to periodically throughout the year, provide any planting and harvest reports to us. And then we also do inspection and sampling. That's a huge part of what we've done over the last, I guess, 9 years now. And, of course, compliance. And I should not leave out outreach. There's been a specific amount of outreach done throughout the state, nationally, events like this, of course, in the last few years, virtual presentations and symposiums and public meetings. The person that has been kind of the heart and soul of the program the whole time since I first began within hemp is Jessica Quinn. She is in charge of registrations and records and wears a lot of other hats. Unfortunately, there's 2 vacant positions. One was our hemp sampling certification coordinator, and the other one is our inspection outreach coordinator. Jessica and I currently serve both those roles. So I was going to kind of go through the update I have. I was going to start with, kind of the history of how we got to where we are now, what we do regarding the inspections and, the registrations and testing, a recent survey we did, an industry response, and a visit we got from our federal partners, the USDA, back in, I guess it was July. As many of you probably know, in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was created to reduce the hemp industry through excessive taxation. In 1970, the Controlled Substance Act classified hemp as an illegal Schedule I drug, and strict regulations from the DEA were placed. After that, much later after that, then Senator Polis flew a hemp flag over the U.S. Capitol. And in 2014, the Farm Bill established a hemp research pilot program, which allowed Colorado to be the first state to cultivate hemp. And in 2018, the Farm Bill actually established specific rules for commercial production. And then in 2019, there was a interim final rule, and over the next year or so, there was 2 public comment periods where, of course, we commented, other states, tribes, and citizens and special interest groups, the industry commented, and thankfully in 2021, the final rule did take into consideration some of those good concerns. A lot of them revolved around, the ability to remediate crops and the more flexibility on a 15-day window for collecting a sample before its harvest, to name a few. And for 2000 up until this year, the continuing resolution extended those with pilot programs like Colorado to keep those till January 1. So we didn't start under the USDA requirements until this year. In 2018, you guys probably recognize that guy. Trump signed the Farm Bill legalizing hemp, and that's when things really started exploding, not only in Colorado but other states. Just in Colorado, in particular, the voters legalized both hemp and recreational marijuana with Amendment 64 in 2012, and of course, Colorado was among the first. When I started, this is actually my first day on the job in 2019. Governor Polis signed the Colorado Hemp Act, to align with the 2018 Farm Bill. So we changed some things in our regulations to, to make us more compliant or ready to administer a federally mandated program. And then we submitted a visionary plan soon after that, and the USDA asked for revisions or more clarifications on certain things. We were very, in a way, I mean, I'm saying visionary, but we were pretty stubborn to an extent. We wanted to stick with what worked best for Colorado. And fortunately, they, approved the plan, within a year. So, like I said, we began with this January 1, and it's had some pretty severe impacts on producers, and of course us. It was kind of exciting when it was approved. We had, of course, Governor Polis came out to the edge of a hemp field. We got a glowing endorsement from Mr. Nelson here, and after that, well, it's been history, really. I'll go over what the implementation of our plan is, which includes research and demonstration registrations, performance-based sampling, certified samplers, authorized labs, and remediation and offsite storage. So what is new for us is, previously all registrations were quote unquote for commercial. They were the same registrations. They had the exact same requirements. We did forego the cost of a registration for institutions of higher learning. But this year we opened that up to private companies doing research and development, and so that's been kind of a positive move to help promote more research in Colorado. And there are various requirements they have to have. They do need to provide a website for their company or institution. They need to provide us a scope and standard operating procedures for their research project or projects. They also need to provide a disposal plan, because all hemp produced in a research registration must be disposed of. It's not, there is some more leniency given on sampling and how often that's done, just solely for the purpose that none of it's going out into the stream of commerce. And we do require all records and photos, as we do with everybody, to maintain for 3 years, because we do audit. We still do random audits of everybody, including research registrations. So the performance-based sampling, there was, one of the things that was a problem in the initial federal rule, and even in our rules, is if a crop tested above the allowable THC limit, or what we call hot, it would have to be basically destroyed. It would have to be burned or mowed down or tilled under. We advocated for some sort of remediation in the stakeholder inputs and our initial state plan, and we didn't get everything we asked for, but we did get some remediation, which is better than what was there before. So this applies to folks using certified cedar clones, those who were doing research and development, also those who have a record of compliant test results over 3 years, and those who produce immature plants, because those are known not to have high levels of THC, and grain and other industrial purposes, things that The grain doesn't have any THC, and then under industrial purposes, building materials, clothing, textiles, non-consumable, other purposes. So those folks may petition to us and ask for a different frequency of sampling. There's no exemption from sampling completely, because we will always at least do random. But we did have, I don't know, I think I have those numbers here. We had I think it's about 15 or 16 performance-based sampling qualifications this year, which isn't a lot, but that represents almost 10% of everybody. Just about almost 10%, more like, it's right around there. So one thing we also initiated this year is one of the requirements of the new the state plan and a USDA requirement is that all crops, 100% of all crops, must be tested within 30 days of harvest. So that's something that the department has never done. Last year we came closest to that by sampling all registrants, but we didn't necessarily do all the lots. We do have limited resources for field staff. Our lab was overtaxed, particularly since 2018. They couldn't do anything else except analyze hemp. And so we had to come up with a plan to get all the hemp sampled, and also and without us necessarily doing it. So we created a certified sampler program. And we developed training. This involved training virtually and testing, basically citizens, to become certified to do this as independent contractors. I think there's still about 15 that are actively or certified as a sampler, and then they do have to have some sort of confidentiality or conflict of interest agreement in place. One of the requirements of the Farm Bill is that a hemp registrant or grower can't test their own crop. So that's one of the reasons for this. Certainly we want to avoid any kind of bias out there and who's doing the testing. And we do have coverage for all 64 counties. I think every county has had hemp grown in it, except I want to say Mineral County, which is basically the Santo de Cristos and San Juan Mountains, those areas. So just Rocky Mountains terrain. And then even though we have this program in place, we will still conduct random sampling inspection for both for compliance and quality control purposes. When we do our random inspection, we're doing more than just coming by and collecting a sample, which is all the certified samplers do. We actually look at all elements of what the grower is required to do. We examine the land area, make sure that they're registering the correct area and everything's within its boundaries. We examine their records. We ensure that they planted what they planted, and they are harvesting or harvested what they said they were going to harvest. And of course, in addition to that, we take samples, and the purpose of those samples is to ensure a sample is collected there. In the event that somebody fails to hire a certified sampler or fails to get their crop tested. And for compliance or quality control purposes, we've had some instances where we've been out there the same day as a certified sampler has, and they use authorized labs, which I'll get into in a minute. But by doing this, we're able to determine whether the results collected by experienced staff members and done by a party, a lab other than our own lab, are similar to what we collect. So the testing is done also by authorized labs. We have, there last I checked was 15 authorized labs. Those were actually certified or are certified by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. They implemented a rule last year for hemp testing and laboratory certification, and they will conduct annual inspections to verify compliance with those rules. Some of those requirements are being ISO certified, reporting to doing their reporting. They have to report to us in a timely manner. They have to report to also the USDA, and they should be reporting to their customers. And we maintain a list of approved laboratories on our website. And like I said, we will continue to do testing for quality control with the routine inspections. That's just a picture of some hemp that's been ground up in a NutriBullet and been put in a solution of alcohol. We do all our, I don't remember I cover this in this, but we do all our testing through gas chromatographs. So the samples heated up to approximately 300 degrees, and there's a total THC delta 9 spike reading on there. It's not like a HPLC, high liquid chromatography test that gives hemp producers it gives you a full cannabinoid profile, which would include THC, CBN, CBG, those sort of things. That's a lot of what the industry is striving for, is the other cannabinoids, certainly not THC. We do it that way, I guess, mostly because it's more straightforward, it's less expensive, it's relatively quick, and that's basically how all the hemp was tested up until this year. I'm noticing most private labs, or virtually all of them are using HPLC testing and providing the complete cannabinoid profile. So the certified laboratories do have to meet all the requirements of the hemp final rule and be DEA registered with the DEA, and because there was an allowance in the federal rule for continuation through this year to allow labs to do regulatory testing without being DEA registered. They call the other ones conditionally certified laboratories. On a note for that, the DEA there has not been a public announcement yet, but I've heard, or I've been told directly by the federal hemp program, that there is a continuing resolution in the process to extend the deadline. The deadline for having labs certified was December 31st of this year, and it looks more than likely it's going to be changed in rule eventually, and if it can't be changed in rule by the end of December, then it'll be extended until until there is a rule change. Obviously, whenever there's a rule change, there has to be a comment period on it, and I doubt that anybody's going to is going to disagree with that. I think overwhelmingly people will embrace that. It's actually been a very big problem trying to get registered by the DEA. Our own lab applied for this in 2019, and we still haven't gotten registered. And we've even been visited by the DEA before. So there you have it. That's what my fingers are crossed for. So this time of year is extremely busy for our program. The peak of harvest is the end of September, but it goes into October. And this is when the samples are being collected and sent to an authorized lab or our own lab. And at this point, they get analyzed, and if they're above the allowable limit, they really have two options to dispose of it. And if it's not more than 1% THC, they can remediate it. So what most of them do is they disc it or till it or mow it. The people that have smaller amounts, like indoor grows and very small pots outdoors, might try burying or composting it or burning it. But a lot of it's sizable enough that burning really isn't the best option in the world. So that's what I've been seeing most. They're required to tell us what method they're going to use, whether they're going to dispose or remediate, how they're going to dispose or remediate, and what that date will be. And they're also required to also provide photo or video, some sort of a video documentation of it occurring. So it clearly shows before the process. This would be a process picture as it's occurring, and then an after picture showing what's left when they're done. The same goes for the remediation. Remediation's been quite the quite the undertaking this year. To remediate, the producer must blend the entire lot into a homogeneous biomass, which is what the majority of them would choose to do, or have chosen to do, or remove and destroy flower material, and then have the rest of it tested. And that isn't used very much because we'll get into this in a minute, but most people are growing hemp still for CBD. This might be something that would be more advantageous to do for a fiber grower. Somebody's utilizing the fibrous part of the plant and has no value in the flower for what they're doing. So that's what we've seen so far. Boy, I wish I had put some slides together for the remediation that's going on now, but I guess it wouldn't really be appropriate because it's actually going on now. But in the future, I'll have some pretty good photos of what's going on. I think one of the biggest challenges you could imagine would be large acreage and trying to remediate that. The biggest ones we've had are 24 acres and 28 acres. In the case of the 24-acre one, that resulted in 200,000 pounds of biomass, which was just an incredible undertaking by this person. I haven't seen the test results yet because that just happened the other day, but I'm really crossing my fingers for them. that, their THC, which wasn't that high, it wasn't that far above 0.3, will come down. You would really expect it if you took the flower material that's, where most of the cannabinoids located, and blend it with the stalks and the stems, and any seeds that don't have a measurable amount of THC in it, it should bring it down. In this case, the farmer was showing me, or actually the sampler was showing me pictures of the combine, and they would take the combine, and he had a portable machine on a forklift, or a skid loader, that augured the material out of the combine into super sacks. And for those of you who don't know what super sacks are, they're very large bags. They weigh several hundred pounds, and I think, if I'm correct, it's 500 to 1,000 pounds, and in this case, it generated 200 super sacks. And so, that was just, a lot of people aren't equipped to do that. This particular farm was. And so, we had a sampler go out there and, randomly sample, a number of the sacks to, collect something from, preferably a different part of the sack, on the top, a few inches down, even further, how far they could reach to get a composite sample. We're always looking for composite samples, even in pre-harvest testing. We go through the whole field and select a certain amount of plants to sample and collect the top 8 inches. And so this, regardless of what we sample, it has to represent the whole lot. So it's been interesting. It's been a learning experience. We still have a few more to go. There's only been 1, 2, 3, possibly going to be 4 remediations done so far. The majority of people, and it's been, I want to say somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 lots have gone above the allowable THC level. Only about 3 or 4 of them elected to remediate. Most of them end up, just destroying it. Really the primary reason is, in one case, it was a very large acreage. I think it was like 60 acres, and he couldn't fathom the expense of trying to remediate that much, so it was easier for him to disc it in. The other cases where they chose not to were very small lots. It really wasn't worth it to them to, to have the expense of sampling and testing it, and the trouble and the possibility that the remediated sample, which also has to be tested, would also come back non-compliant. So that's kind of the status of where remediation is right now. Going to the registrations and the reporting, we're back to where we were when we first started. As I mentioned earlier, it really exploded in 2018, 2019. Up to that year, the program had doubled in size and number of registrations and land area. And after 2019, which there was a very big overproduction year, more people got into hemp production that year in our state and other states than before in history. And there was just a glut. And again, most people were growing for CBD, and that market was totally saturated. So it started to drop off quickly in 2020. It dropped off even more in 2021 and even more this year. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to bring that back or how that might come back. Just a quick breakdown. We had 11 registrations primarily from schools like CSU and CU with research registrations, and we were for the first time able to register 10 private institutions or companies to do research. We always have, it seems like there's always a certain amount of people in the queue awaiting felony background check. That kind of holds up the registration process now more than it ever did before. We had it down to where it only took a matter of days to get this done, and some of these are taking some folks are taking weeks to figure out how to get fingerprinted and go through the process of a felony background check. So one of the biggest growing pains we're having right now with the new rules is, the federal requirement is that all hemp grown, every variety, every lot has to have a unique FSA number or Farm Services Agency number. That's assigned from another branch of the USDA, which is the FSA. And so registrants have to go and contact their local office, which is a county office. They have to provide a map and legal information on the area they're growing in, and the different lots and sublots within that farm, and they get a farm number, tract number, field number, subfield letter, and a lot of them have done that, but a lot of them haven't, or they just had issues. They didn't report a complete number. They are doing a better job of submitting harvest reports in a timely manner, but there's still a lot to be desired there. We've made great strides, particularly this week, in getting people compliant. I actually sent out a mass email Monday morning and have been overwhelmed, but we've been able to help a lot of people in the last 2 days get compliant. So overall it's a plus. This is kind of what I was telling you about. It's basically a pretty sharp bell curve here to where we're at now, and we're hoping to see improvement. I'm thinking that after what's happening now is the industry is the infrastructure is slowly being built for fiber and other industrial process uses, and we're hoping to see that continue to happen. I've got some more information about what is going on in the state on that, but it's really that's really, I think, what a lot of states, what the industry needs, what certainly Colorado needs, is people growing hemp for other reasons than CBD. It's going to be a slow process because most farms aren't equipped to do CBD with the size requirements or the equipment or infrastructure requirements on their farm or the experience to grow fiber hemp. All right, so I was telling you about the inspection or the random inspections we do. We selected 40 registrants this season. I believe they've largely been completed, and so it's proven to be effective. It's answered people's a lot of questions when we're there looking at their paperwork and providing them guidance on what they need to be doing. Out of the 12, actually right now there's only 12 certified hemp labs, and only 5 of them are analyzing samples on a regular basis. So that's just something to keep in mind. The ones that are listed on our website are all certified by the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, but some of the labs have elected not to take, I guess you'd call them wet samples from the field. They don't like bringing in hemp as moisture. It's more of a process for them because it has to be analyzed on a dry weight basis. So they have to dry out the samples. A lot of them are larger than the samples that are sent into them from growers to get an idea of where they're at on their cannabinoid profile. And so there's been quite a few that have chosen not to do it, or there's even one that just dropped out of the program, decided not to do it anymore on the Western Slope, which is unfortunate because that means all our labs that are certified now are on the Front Range and have to be, the samples have to be expedited, shipped over here in the Western Slope. There are out of the 573 lots in the database, 346 have been sampled and analyzed to date. Actually, it might be a little bit more than that by now. And 81 of those were analyzed by our lab. So, I'll have to do another analysis. I think most people are getting their lots tested. Of course, that's something we have to ensure that's getting done. And we have a compliance rate of about 90%. There's about 10% that don't pass. This is a little higher than the last year or two. We had it down to 8 or 9%, but we had a threshold when our lab did all the testing of up to 0.4 is where we considered taking any kind of action or requiring disposal of hemp. And the new rule requires 0.3% and allows for a measurement of uncertainty, which is, in the neighborhood of another 0.005, depending on which lab or the method. So it's usually anything up to 0.34 or 0.35 could still pass, but there's still going to be a larger number of samples after that before you get to 0.4 that are going to test non-compliant this year. We did a survey back in July to see how we were doing. It did go to a lot of people. I guess 76 responses isn't a lot, but it's still good information. I guess what the industry really wanted, and this kind of confirms some of the things we already knew talking to folks and going through the stakeholder process, is, if the registration fees were lower, really the fees in general for registering. Now it's more expensive, generally speaking, to get samples taken because they have to pay a private sampler, an independent sampler, and then they also have to pay a private lab to do it. And those costs are generally higher than what we were charging. They wish the process to register was easier. I imagine a lot of that's based on the fact that now a background check has to be done, and there are pretty strict mapping requirements and GPS requirements to do this, and many of them are this says understanding the rules and regulations, but a lot of them are just overwhelmed by them. They think the industry's too heavily regulated, which I understand. This is more of a breakdown of what people want to see, or there was a better market for it. Obviously CBD is going to be the biggest one because that's what most people are doing. It's right now it's a higher market value in general, and there is still a significant interest in seed, fiber, and grain. So, just as a synopsis of the whole survey is, sampling, testing, and other costs have been a barrier. The unstable or poor market I was telling you about earlier has been a barrier. The overregulation has been a barrier. The high risk associated with THC. This year, with the embargo, the grain embargo, and Russia and Ukraine being impacted by the war, grain prices are at an all-time high in the United States. And, it's a lot less risky to grow those crops and certain other crops and with a guaranteed price. So that has also affected the market, or the number of people that are willing to take a risk growing hemp. And there were, a significant amount of people that were, basically happy and planned on registering again. We have provided folks with, assistance on the FSA lot number reporting, but they want to streamline that, and I agree. It would be nicer if there was an easier way to get this done. The fees and the regulations were less. The testing requirements weren't as strict, and there was some sort of financial and marketing assistance, for farmers, who are bringing their market to, buyers, processors, and a co-op. A lot of people suggested a co-op to bring their hemp crop to. And what a lot of the folks see in the industry going on in Colorado nationally are small businesses being adversely affected and large companies dominated the market. Decreasing to overall regulations. They were too many agencies involved. Obviously now, besides being regulated by the state, they're regulated by the federal government and the DEA. I guess secretly they were always regulated by the DEA, but the DEA's requirements and the final rule certainly evident with the lab requirements in particular. And they're hoping for the market to level off, and again they're expecting a shift towards other uses for hemp. So we did have some grants available, stimulus money, and those were awarded to 5 hemp producers that had varying projects. They had to improve the food and agricultural supply, increase new jobs, and assist underserved or underrepresented communities. They included processing for fiber and pulp in the paper industry. They included products for insulation, for building products, energy production, and nutrient recycling. They also had there's also a project for other building materials, and there's one project of a laboratory developing 10 new strains of hemp, with very low or no THC, and that's a pretty admirable goal within the next 1 to 5 years. We do have things that are positive moving forward, or the hemp fiber processing facilities that are being built. There's a significant one in Monte Vista, Longmont, and Greeley. They're already have significant acreage contracted for next year. If it was in fact 8,000 acres, that would be more than double, what we have this year. So that would be a good rebound. We did put out a networking survey to connect growers with, manufacturers, processors, really the whole supply chain. So our marketing division can further assist domestic and international trade. And we also have had the 18 registrants approved for performance-based sampling, which has provided more flexibility for the industry. And we are doing a lot of customer assistance with the registration and background checks, particularly Jessica. We are proactively helping with these planting and harvest reports, FSA numbers, working with the FSA offices regionally and locally, and then providing compliance information to the industry via emails and our website, newsletters, and we still hold a couple symposiums a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. All that information is on our website, and I do work very closely with the USDA to ensure, Colorado is doing it within what our plan says, and making sure they agree with any modifications. They actually came out here. They wanted to come out here since 2019, but COVID shut that down. But that's Bill Richmond there on the right in the front, and he is the chief of the USDA hemp production program. That's our commissioner next to him. Yours truly, Heather from CDA Lab, and other folks from USDA and CDA. We visited our lab. They were very impressed with that. And we went to several on-site locations. We went to New West Genetics and looked at a research field they have, and discussed research and hemp and food, and hemp and grain. We also went to a processing facility in Longmont and looked at this machine. This was acquired from the Ukraine 2 weeks before the war broke out. So they were very fortunate to get this machine, and they ran a bale of hemp through there, and you can see kind of the fiber that results from that. The fiber can be used for, again, textiles, plastics, other textiles. We also went to a commercial production field. This is what they call dual use crop. It's grown. It's supposed to have good qualities for fiber and for CBD. We went to, I don't know if you guys ever heard of Ed Lehrberger, but he's kind of the mad scientist of hemp. He's got all kinds of projects going on. He's got a machine that makes energy from hemp. This is his prototype machine, similar to the decorticator I showed you earlier. I mean, it's not really similar, but it does the same thing. This is some of the paper he produces. And we also went to Colorado Hemp Works and visited with Matt Burkholz. He buys hemp seed and roasts it and makes hemp products out of it. Hemp powders primarily, and roasted seeds for food. And I believe everything he does is wholesale to people incorporate this or repackage it or put it in their foods. So that was a very interesting visit. And then we ended up that day, we ended up at the Capitol, and Jared Polis and all of us sat down. That's Wanderad Gabru, the director of our division. And we had a very good policy discussion. One of the biggest things, and this also came out from the producers we visited with the USDA that day, to establish grants. The producers want federal grants. The state could really use a federal grant because our program's been adversely affected. You'll notice we had to vacate a couple positions just because there's not enough registrations to support it. We're 100% funded by hemp registrations, and so the producers have to carry the whole load on their back. So we're also hoping for USDA to allow use of hemp as feed. We're also hoping the FDA can expedite this process and then waive any kind of testing requirement for certified seed. And of course, the DEA laboratory going away, and it sounds like that is going to go away. I'm running out of time. I want to leave time for questions, but Kate Greenberg did testify to the U.S. Committee on Agriculture at the end of July with some of the same, basically some of the same talking points. And additionally, at that hearing, there was a doctor from Central State University, somebody from the Hemp at Heart Project, somebody from the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, and Ryan Quarles, the commissioner of the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. Their points were, to create a niche market for hemp and agriculture, and to create more jobs. It was hemp fiber products for textiles and fashion and building materials. That hemp is one of the most carbon negative agricultural or forestry crops available. And FDA again create a regulatory pathway and also raise the THC threshold from 0.3 to 1%. So that was kind of a mouthful. I didn't leave a lot of time for questions, but I can certainly stay later if necessary. Did anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much, Brian. Great presentation, very informative. We do have a couple of questions, and for everybody that is still on the webinar, please submit your questions to the Q&A section of the webinar, and we can answer it there. First question is, what is Colorado doing to continue its leadership in the hemp industry?
That's a great question. I think I would point to one thing that I participate in regularly is a national group of national departments of agriculture and tribes. We share information and what Colorado's doing, both to offer more flexibility to growers, and also kind of an update of what how our growers are being affected. I think that's sharing and providing. We provided sampling protocols. We've provided quite a bit of information for the industry themselves. Like I said, there have been grants. We intend on trying to really push out additional resources. We have been very active, as I mentioned a minute ago, legislatively on Capitol Hill, trying to get our agenda pushed forward. And we will continue to work very closely with USDA and trying to get more flexibility for the industry.
Very good. Okay, and we have one more question. What challenges are other states and tribes having with hemp production and regulation?
That's a great question. There was just another state that had their own hemp program, and Missouri, and they just announced they're dropping out of regulating their own hemp. The states that choose not to do so, that the USDA regulates them. The states that have not doing it, North Carolina also dropped out. They just didn't have the resources. Either in some cases, they've been affected by the shrinkage of the industry, because Colorado's not the only one that's dramatically reduced. I mean, the other states have been too. The only ones that grew were the ones that didn't have hemp programs at all. but it's, it's created a challenge for us, just just being able to support staff and having the resources to do it. So that's been a big challenge for states, funding, I guess you would say. Some of them are some states seem to be politically adverse to any kind of cultivation of hemp. I think Nebraska, New Hampshire, there's southern states that are that way. Mississippi, for example, the state's not embracing it there or not doing it there. They've required the feds to come in. So those are the biggest barriers I've seen for other states on the government or the regulatory side. On the producer side, it would be similar to us, so some of the growing pains of the new rules and developing a plan to try to accommodate the USDA rules.
Okay, great. It looks like that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you very much for your participation in this webinar. I would like to thank Brian Koontz for an excellent job, Eurofins AgroScience Services, and our webinar coordinator, Kyle Sawyer. You may be asked to complete a follow-up survey after the webinar, and we look forward to your feedback. Our last 2022 webinar is on November 30th at 12 in the East, featuring Sarah McCoy, who will speak on a CRO perspective on the challenges of ecotox testing and the registration of biologics. This webinar is rescheduled due to conflicts in the conference schedule for our presenter and for our audience. Our facilitator will be one from earlier this year, Solito Simulong of Agri Authority and the ISAA Agrochemical Network. Thank you for your attention and see you on November 30th.